Hi, good morning. I'm Tim Otis from the Checkpoint Incident Response Team. I'm here with John Nichols from the Incident Response Team. I'm here live from the East Coast United States, and John's joining us from the UK. Um, just a little bit about our team very quickly. The Incident Response Team here at Checkpoint provides all kinds of incident response services. Uh, Live response to active threats is our bread and butter. We assist with eradication and containment of active threats in the environment, root cause investigations in the environment, uh, and also after actions, lessons learned, whether it's a training or consulting services around lessons learned. And we also have a plethora of proactive services that our team provides, such as compromise assessments, tabletop incident response exercise scenarios, and incident response plans and playbooks creation for customers. Both John and I are Checkpoint employees, and our team works for Checkpoint, but our team is vendor agnostic. We have customers who have zero Checkpoint gear. We have customers who do have Checkpoint gear. You don't have to be a Checkpoint employee to work with us, and we have several cases where customers have no Checkpoint gear at all. The only other thing, feel free to ask questions during this in the chat, and we'll get you answers. And John has some slides.
John does have some slides, yeah. So John is going to sort his slides out now. Tim, you've very well done the introduction of us and talked about us. And I guess we've been talking recently about we're none of us are out of COVID-19 yet. We were talking before about how long we've been in this and how long it's been going on. And since March in the UK, basically we've been in lockdown of one sort or another, and we were talking about the what we saw during COVID. We had a lot of activity initially about the things that we were seeing during COVID, the extra threats that people were seeing, and we've just spent some time, I guess, reflecting on those recently and what we were seeing then against what we're seeing now. Reflecting on those, we were looking at remote access solutions being targeted because lots more people were standing up remote access solutions. We were seeing lots of email-based attacks based on the subject of coronavirus. Obviously phishing attacks have been around for donkey's years anyway. Organizations that were supporting the response being targeted, and there was that influx of Zoom issues straight out of the gate of COVID, I suppose. But just talking about what's changed, well, nothing really. Remote access solutions are still being targeted. I guess what we're seeing now is that there's more exploits around out there, but there's more organizations that have unnecessarily exposed themselves to the internet. There's more VPN gateways that are being compromised. And I guess the question that we're seeing from customers, from organizations is, okay, so my ex vendor VPN gateway has been compromised. Has an attacker made it inside? And that's the question that they want answering, right? So are people getting inside their environment, which brings about a compromise assessment service or a root cause analysis service that we provide. Email-based attacks leading to Office 365 compromises. We were seeing those before anyway. There just seems to be hosts more of those. I think the figures that we had before were something about 90% of incidents, compromises came from phishing attacks. Ransomware, we're just seeing customers being hit by ransomware. We're seeing it in the news every day. Another customer, not necessarily Checkpoint customers, anybody's customers, organizations out there being hit by ransomware. And I think, personally, and Tim, I'll take your view on this, is that they're becoming more prevalent. And I guess what we used to see before was that there was a sort of a greater dwell time between the actual infiltration or the first point of compromise of an organization and the ransomware deployment. We used to see sort of weeks, if not months, and now we're seeing it being days, basically.
We did. A stat, and I don't have the exact stats, but in general, within the last 2 years prior to 2020, a dwell time of 9 months was about average, give or take 6 months, 9 months, where a threat actor was in the environment, in doing reconnaissance for that amount of time before they would deploy their ransomware. Now, as John, like you just said, we've done cases where it's weeks, it's days. Now the threat actors are, I don't know if they're more resourceful in their operation of understanding, but the threat actor is doing work in the environment, reconnaissance. They want to find out where all the backup servers are. They want to now even the double whammy of not only are ransomware threat actors encrypting the data on the machines, they're also stealing the data, exfiltrating the data, and then threatening to post that publicly if the victim doesn't pay the ransom. So there's the ransom to decrypt the machines and the ransom to not leak the data that the threat actor stole. The thing you're down here about RDP, right? One thing that we did notice during COVID is so many, the first few weeks even, you could look on Shodan and see just so many more RDP just servers out there, boxes more and more exposed to RDP. There are certain ransomware that only actually operate via, or the threat actor's initial foothold is only RDP. So just the explosion of RDP was a big problem. And one problem that we see on the team when we're triaging cases is customers sometimes don't realize they've accidentally exposed RDP to the internet, whether it's a development environment that just is open, or an accidental firewall rule that just accidentally opens something too wide. We see that a lot.
Yeah, so I guess just stepping on from there, and I guess the continual conversation we had with customers, and I suppose we see customers that come to us and are looking for the root cause analysis, don't we? They want to know how somebody got in. We also see customers come to us that don't really care, don't have the time, maybe the finances to work on that, and come to us looking for the answer about what do they need to do next. And I guess we end up going through those engagements, coming out with a report at the end about the recommendations that we come out with. And I suppose the thing I'm conscious of is a lot of the recommendations we come out with are largely the same every time. Right. So we talk about don't expose unnecessary services to the internet. So the RDP, I think even back in the early days of COVID, we saw SMB being exposed to the internet. Talk to customers about protecting necessary services without it being a sales pitch for specifically Checkpoint technologies, Checkpoint products, but just the things that they need to do, the things that they could have had in place that might have helped them, might have prevented something, might have helped them detect something in the first place. Because I think that's commonly what we see when we go through the engagements and look at what happened and what could the customer have done to have stopped what happened, which is what recommendations are all about. But I think, like I say, there's commonality in those. So not exposing unnecessary services to the internet. Multi-factor authentication, we talk about to nearly everybody, I guess. And I know it's not the thing that is going to stop something, but there's got to be such a higher rate of possibility that implementing something like multi-factor authentication will help them. We see all the Office 365 breaches where when you go back through the logs, you've had somebody logging in from countries that a user's never been to, would never be in, shouldn't come out to the internet to. So, implementing multi-factor authentication on anything that they can might have helped that organization, might have stopped them being breached in the first place. But I guess, we talk to customers a lot. We talk to them about their strategy for recovery and how they're going to go about it. We help them do that in some respects. We talk to them about multi-factor authentication. And one of the most prevalent answers that we get is that pushback about the pushback they would get from their users and their administrators. But those people that we're talking to seem to be happy to be working 18-hour days for 3 weeks to do that recovery thing. So I guess it's that which would you prefer, the pain of implementing multi-factor authentication or the pain of having to go through an attack, really?
Yeah, John, it's amazing how many cases we see, and I say this kind of, and I know this is ambiguous, but the basics of the basics are the attack vector. Multi-factor and authentication and the reuse of passwords is a giant problem still to this day. People who don't use multi-factor, but actually have users who have used the same password for maybe their social media accounts and their corporate passwords, and then accidentally are disclosed in a breach. And then the threat actors have scripts to do credential stuffing to try every single username and password that they have in their big database. And it's, surprisingly enough, it works for customers who don't have multi-factor. So the authentication piece, tightening that up is one of those basics that if it can be done, it can save a lot of headache and save some 18-hour days, like John said.
And the next one we see, about keeping systems patched. I guess we often go into places where we see, what we now call legacy operating systems. We're not just talking about Windows XP now. Server 2003, operating systems that are end of life, and we have conversations with customers about how do we keep that up to date. Well, you can't, because it's end of life, so it's vulnerable anyway. But it's not. So it's not about it's really easy to say, oh, you should reinstall. But sometimes organizations can't reinstall because that's that Windows XP machine is connected to that piece of scientific machinery or that piece of operational technology that can't be replaced because of whatever process it's involved in, or it costs too much money. But so actually, like I say, it's really easy to say keep your systems patched and up to date, replace legacy systems, etc. But in places where you can't, there needs to be that sort of mitigation strategy, protection strategy about what they do, what they implement, how they harden the operating system, how they control access to the machine, all that stuff to make sure that machine doesn't get isn't part of the attack. I guess the flip side of that is that we've seen where ransomware has hit an organization and all of the up-to-date Windows machines were affected by the ransomware, but the Windows XP machines weren't touched because it didn't run on those. So I guess in that respect you could say, well, don't patch them, don't mitigate, because that won't happen to you. But I guess that's not a risk that you can take. So I guess like I say, where you can't patch, mitigate, protect, do something else. But it's too easy sometimes for us just to say reinstall, don't have legacy operating systems. Really,
it's really easy to sit on a high horse as an information security professional and say, yo, you didn't patch, or you need to do this, you need to upgrade your systems, and that simple fact, especially in medical, is that you just can't. Some places require recertification of machines after they've been patched, and sometimes that's a long and arduous process. Some vendors just straight up don't support new versions, and it's so easier said than done. The thing to do there, though, is the segmentation. John, like you said, limiting access. Don't let people talk to those machines if they must be online and can't be patched. Put some kind of shelter around them with network segmentation. It'd be surprised. You wouldn't be surprised, or you may, that even in this year, 2020, 3 years after Eternal Blue, we're still getting WannaMine cases and WannaCry cases. People are still exposing 3-year-old vulnerabilities to the internet somehow, and so it's still a problem. And if you can't patch, please segment them away so that they can, and don't let them talk to the internet.
Yeah, and prevention, it's easy. I think, the Checkpoint tagline is about prevention from a product perspective. Like Tim says, we're product agnostic anyway, so we don't necessarily deal with the product, but it's sometimes difficult to prevent, right? So you have to have a way of detecting. I guess one of the common things we have, one of the common recommendations we have is about EDR technology, endpoint detection and response. And if an organization had that or had a means of detecting what was going on the endpoints, because more often than not, that's obviously where it starts, a user clicking on something, a piece of malware being deployed that's not detected straight away, and 3 days afterwards, the the antivirus or endpoint protection detects it and removes it, and everybody sees that as a positive, right? Because the system's working. Our endpoint protection, our endpoint detection is working and it's picking stuff up. So that's a good news story, right? But actually, there's a dwell time, right? So there's a time that the attacker got onto a machine. There's a time that that piece of malware got detected. In that time, they've done something else. So by the time that the malware is detected by endpoint protection, they don't care about it anyway. They've moved on from there. They've got a foothold in the environment, and we've shown that, time and time again, from root cause analysis of these, large-scale compromises, that people have moved on, attackers have moved on, gone from that machine because it's got local admin privileges, maybe onto another machine. They found the domain controller. They've been able to escalate privileges, dump passwords, get a list of machines, etc. And that's where the ransomware comes in. So I guess the big thing is, and it's a really easy thing to say from an incident response perspective or from an incident responder's perspective of everything's perfect. Respond to detections. Look at those detections, and if there's time to do it, do some investigation into a positive detection. How long was it there between it being detected and that file being created on that endpoint, maybe, and what else happened on that endpoint, or in respect of that endpoint, did somebody then RDP from that endpoint to one of your DCs, perhaps? Is that a problem? Should somebody from a user laptop be RDPing or remotely accessing a DC, perhaps? So just that response and that investigation into detections, in some cases, may well have helped an organization detect something and stop something in its tracks.
There's been many times where we're in an investigation, we rewind the logs that are there, and there are detections for it. There was evidence that something was weird going on, if not straight up saying, yo, this malware is here on this box, but there were clues in the logs, and it often comes back to alert fatigue and response fatigue inside the organization, which actually that's a product yielded from improper tuning and improper operations around your protections. What are you enabling? When are you watching them to see if they're false positive generators? Are you adding exceptions to eliminate the false positives? Are you making the detections that come into your SIEM real? When things land on the SIEM, are they real, or does most of the staff think, that's a false positive, we don't have to worry about that? Unfortunately, a lot of the cases we work, it's the latter, where the SOC operators, the responders, or the IT staff in the environment is overwhelmed with alert fatigue and underwhelmed with response, or just not responding to things that are definitely fishy. And it's painful for us as a team to look at those logs and say, oh my goodness, on the 7th they had this alert that would have helped them understand that they were compromised, or those kind of things are hard to deal with.
I think this is a conversation where the customers a lot as well is, why us? We didn't expect to get targeted, and I guess but my common answer is you probably weren't targeted. You probably just got found. There was somebody, the start of it may well have been that a wide scale phishing attack from somewhere that an attacker is just spreading their seed as far and wide as possible and seeing who picks it up, and if they get a 10-20% hit rate, they don't care. They don't care who you are as an organization necessarily. They might care when they get in there and find who you are, but actually when that first catch is, you don't care who it is. They don't care who it is. And so, I think that there's a lot of talk about targeted attacks. I'm not sure some of the attacks are as targeted as people imagine. That they are special and being targeted. There's no reason why they shouldn't be special. But I don't think there's as many targeted attacks as I think we talk about targeted attacks, or I don't think there's as many targeted attacks as people talk about. Attackers don't care initially who their victim is. They might care, like I say, down the road when they find out who the victim is and what information they can extract from that organization to hold them to ransom, maybe. But the initial bite point, they probably don't care. It's indiscriminate, really.
You can see it, in fact, with for example, WordPress and a vulnerable library in WordPress. You can see that it's the weaponization of vulnerabilities is happening at a rapid pace these days. And with tools like Shodan and an exploit that hits, if an exploit hits for WordPress, I can instantly grep all of the internet, search the whole internet with Shodan to say what servers out there have this version of WordPress. And if so, I can just go launch attacks. And on the other side of that WordPress, it could be a valuable corporation. It could also be, just a small-time business that isn't of much interest, but could be a pivot point for other attacks, like a heating and air conditioning company that helps you get into another place. Those kind of things, and just also about the wide casting of the net, with the phishing emails, like you mentioned, John. The Emotet phishes, for example, the campaigns we see, which are usually a precursor to a TrickBot and Ryuk ransomware infection, we've triaged Emotet phishing from everyone from home users that got the same phishing email as corporate users, and if they click on that or open the document and do get their machines infected, if the machine's not necessarily joined to a domain, it may not be interesting for the threat actor. If that machine is joined to the domain, especially for a TrickBot or a Ryuk ransomware threat actor, it's very interesting because that can be the pivot point. That box can be the pivot point to the other things inside the environment. But yeah, about targeted attacks and widespread net, hackers gonna hack and threat actors are gonna threat act, and it's so easy to find vulnerable systems. The moment that a exploit is released, it's just very easy to find vulnerable systems. It's really easy to cast a giant phishing net, and you're gonna catch some fish.
Cool. I mean, those, I guess, is, like we say, are the most common recommendations that we end up giving people. And having been through, Tim and myself and the team been through quite a lot of investigations, done quite a lot of this now. I think these are probably the most common recommendations. Certainly, those first four that seem to be the most common recommendations we have that we come out with at the moment, rather than specifically about their organization or Active Directory and stuff like that. But I guess if we were going to go for a general set of recommendations, things people should look at in security, those first four definitely would be high up there, right?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And one other thing that about that wide net that just sprang to mind, with COVID, we've had people going home using their own home. Some people using their own home systems to do their work. So if you got phished at home and that computer was compromised and you're now accessing work stuff, it gives threat actors access in. And we're all walking around with mobile devices, and some of our mobile devices are personal devices, and we're checking work email and theoretically, other emails. So just that casting of a wide net to get home users infected too. There's this ambiguity now happening with COVID where people are either taking their work machines home, sometimes their corporate desktops home to their desk, but also using their own personal machines and laptops to do work. And it's blurring the lines sometimes between what's a work machine, what's a personal resource, and if one's infected, they're both basically, compromised.
Yeah, what organizations need to protect, I suppose. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I guess, just talking about our services and how we can help people, really, I put them all up there. So, that middle part, detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, is what, these are our proper incident response services, our technical incident response services, reactive incident response services, I suppose. But then, just pushing on a bit about preparation, we've got those preparation services. We can do those assessments for customers, do the development of plans and playbooks, tabletop exercises, maturity assessments, compromise assessment, threat hunting, finding those threats inside their environments, and the attack surface mapping, looking at what they look like from the outside, as well as those follow-on services of root cause analysis, post-incident review. We've mentioned, I think, doing that after-action review, and all the stuff that we do, service recovery and remediation planning, that where we look to bring in partners and stuff, and potentially customers. I guess what we're seeing is a lot of customers post incident need that continuous monitoring part, and then are needing a sort of managed service on top of that going forward, because maybe they're not big enough to have their own security operations center or security operations staff, so they're looking for a managed service for that on top, really. Just, I guess, the final one of the slides really is about the contacting us and 24/7 hotline. The numbers are on. There's numbers globally. You can email into the emergency-response@checkpoint.com email address. I think, as Tim mentioned earlier on, we're vendor agnostic, and we offer that 30-minute response. Certainly by email, you'll get somebody on the end of the 24/7 hotline anyway, and obviously more information there on the ThreatCloud incident response link there.
Yeah, and we love to talk to people. So if anyone who has any problems, please, or any questions about active threats, phishing email, maybe a weird file you found inside your environment and you need to know what it is, please hit us up. We would love to talk to you.